right, sorry for the somewhat late start as usual. When I least expected, the technical goblins come in and wreak havoc on the system, but of course it turned out to be something totally stupid and user error on my part, but it's all settled. I'm here with Ray Otus, who thanks for dropping in. Um, I guess
Sure.
before we get into the Gygax 75 madness, what's your gamer story? When did you get started? How'd you get started? What did you play? What are you playing now?
Yeah. 1977. So I'm old. 77. I picked up the Blue Holmes Basic was the first thing I played, and then quickly went to AD&D. But I was also playing heavily the metagaming games at the time, which were the little. They came in a little pocket bag, zip bag with little dice in them. So Ogre, the cybernetic tank. It's like a hex encounter game. I love that one. Um, Melee, Wizard, Death Test. So those was kind of like solo gaming, right? With
Right.
with
I
those.
remember having some variations of those, but I hadn't thought about those in years and years until you just mentioned them right now. But when you
Mhm,
said the bag with the little dice, I was like, oh yeah.
mhm.
I
I
think
love
Ogre's
those
still
things.
around in different forms, but yeah, they are really
They
cool.
all are. They all are. They just they call it the Melee Wizard Death Test is called the Fantasy Trip now, and they just did a Kickstarter for that about 2 years ago with a huge box with new counters and everything.
Sounds really cool. Did you go on the usual progression from AD first AD&D to second AD&D to third? When did they stop calling it that? When did they
No,
take the A down? I don't know. Third, fourth, fifth.
so right around third edition is when they took the A off. I didn't do much second edition because that was the high school and college years for me. So once I got about halfway through high school, I got onto girls and cars and things, and not D&D, and yeah, and then didn't come back to it really until I graduated from college and kind of picked it up again. And at that point, I jumped back in. That was still second edition, I think. Yeah, it was. So I played a little bit of second edition then, but mostly I was playing Call of Cthulhu, Top Secret, the original Deadlands game. What else? Alternity. We were playing all kinds of stuff there. And then when third came out, went third, and then from there it was a lot of story games. So I probably spent 15 years playing, from mid 2000s forward, a lot of story games, and then for the last couple of years for me, it's been more old school stuff.
Nice. So what brought you back from the story game landscape to OSR? Was there something that came out of the woodwork to kind of ping you back, or you just was looking for kind of that old feeling, or what was it?
I think I love a lot of games, and I don't have any beefs with any particular style of game. But at the time, I was into story games a lot. I had a lot of time to run games like one-offs, meaning I could go to cons and things, but I didn't have a regular. I didn't have time for a regular group. My life was very chaotic. I was traveling a lot and I had a new job and everything. And so those games are great, I think, for moving quickly, getting a lot into like a small space. So like Dungeon World, I can play that for 2 or 3 hours and have a massive epic story, right? Come out of that, a lot enough to kind of make you feel like you've been on a journey. And then as we got back into more like game group every week kind of play, that's when DCC I think was the first thing I came back to, and then from there I just got interested in history, right, and started reading all the old stuff, even the things that, like I said, I came in 77. It wasn't three little books anymore in 77, right? It was the beginning of the hardbacks, and so it was neat for me to go back and uh, dig in. As when I started going to Gary Con too, to kind of and that inspired me to look more into the beginning of the hobby.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I wonder if people, because for me it was I didn't really until much later think about things that came before BX was. I'm a little bit younger than you, but not too
Mm-hmm.
much younger. But BX was kind of my first set, though A&D had mixed in.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to think in my head which ones I had first, and I really can't remember. My earliest memories, I pretty much remember having both, you know,
Right.
but I never thought about as a kid, like, well, what was before that? I almost wonder, like, a lot of the people who playing fifth edition, do they think about the fourth, thirds, whatever? Or I wonder if they look at it like versions of an operating system. Like, why would you go back to Windows 8 if you're on Windows, Windows 10 or 11 or whatnot?
Right.
But so it's really interesting. I think the story game stuff is neat because I think I don't want to say they get a bad rap, but I guess depending on what community you're in, but I do think they have a lot of interesting things that we can learn from them
Mm-hmm.
if we kind of open up, if we don't get too, I guess, dogmatic on some kind of weird principle of
Yeah,
X, Y, or Z.
absolutely. I definitely think that's true. I mean, the thing like Dungeon World is basically just D&D turned into a story game, right? Using the Powered by the Apocalypse engine. But one of the things that taught me was, uh, so there's times in a combat where the whiff factor gets kind of high, and you have these exchanges where I swing and miss, and the monster swings and misses, and you go back and forth a couple times, and people are not hitting. It can get very kind of grindy and not that much fun, right? And that never happens in Dungeon World because of the way the dice are set up. Basically, you don't hit, the monster hits you back. And it was the same way in fighting fantasy way back when, right? When you rolled the 2d6, it was an opposed roll there. So whoever won did the damage. And that's something that I learned from there, with just how much of a different feel you get when you never have the nothing happens exchange in combat.
I think that's one of those unspoken, or maybe not spoken enough, problems when you get to kind of mid or high level D&D. Because when you're I think with my party who's like second level, and even though on the power curve, because I have some house homebrew kind of stuff, they're more powerful offensively than your average second level D&D character, BX D&D character, but defensively they're at the same level. They don't have any more hit points, they don't have any more armor class. And to your point of, at those low levels, when you have maybe 2 hits worth of hit points, let's say, even when you're whiffing, there's that tension of who's going to make that first hit, because that first hit is so vital, right? Or if you're down 1 hit, and you're like, I can only get hit 1 more time, and now you and the monster are going back and forth missing. It's kind of like this ever scaling up tension. But that very much goes away when I have 40 hit points. If I have 40 hit points and the monster's 40 hit points, and now we're whiffing, that tension's gone. And now it's just, we're just like, okay, like, can somebody please hit just to move things forward? Can somebody please just do something?
And the problem gets even worse if the healing is very liberal. Meaning, I've been in 5th and 5th edition combats, and I'm not speaking ill of 5th edition. It's a great game, but I've been in combat with 5th edition where, as a fighter, the cleric is behind you, and your hit points go all the way down, and then you get this huge influx, and then they get all the way down again, and you get another huge influx, right? And it's kind of like, even getting close to 0 isn't that dramatic, because that, like, until the healer is, that's it, I'm out of healing, then it gets real. But before that, it's not.
So of course, now in 5th edition, they have clerics who don't really want to heal. So maybe maybe you're getting down like, oh, the cleric's going to heal me up. The cleric's like, nope, sorry, I'm spending all mine on this meteor swarm or something else, and then you're out of luck. But yeah, I totally feel you. So the Gygax 75 challenge, were you? Because I know you posted it, I think in 2020. I think it's not that it just you didn't just release it now. I want to say probably Questing Beast is the one that kind of threw it in everybody's face. And I want to point out that I did look at it before Questing Beast is, but nobody looks at my channel. So, right. And I didn't do it totally in depth. I only looked at week 2, but it was a little bit funny when I did my thing. And then like a week later, Questing Beast comes out, and all of a sudden they see Gygax 75 challenge everywhere. And I was like, well, I missed it. I missed it by a week.
Maybe Ben's watching your channel and got the idea from there. I don't know.
If
so, hi Ben, love your work.
Oh yeah, definitely. So what was the original thing? So I mean, did you 2020? You were sifting through old wargaming magazines? What was the process?
Actually, so I'm gonna open a link here for myself so I can remember the date. But there was the Dragons Never Forget blog, a guy named Charlie that does that, and he was the first one to kind of start a Gygax 75 challenge. So I want to give credit to the name. To him, the whole booklet is kind of my take on things, and but he was the one that came up with the idea for the challenge. And then I decided that the article that Gygax wrote, first of all, I'm kind of a fan of early Gygax, right? Like, I think he's problematic, no question. He liked to take others' works and incorporate it and kind of take credit, but he also did a lot. We won't get into that argument, but early Gygax was very much like, hey, this is just a suggestion, do it your own way. Like every table is different, and then we got into AD&D, started codifying things really hard. So if you look at his early writing, it's kind of interesting. And this article from 1975, where he tells you how to get started, basically, it's kind of a how to play D&D as it was back then, right? As a GM. And it's really interesting, and I think the advice is still good. And so I tried to just work it into. I was doing it for myself as much as anything. Some friends and I went through it together the first couple times, and decided to just create some exercises that would help somebody get through it in a timely manner. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I didn't watch the Questing Beast video. Did he say how he stumbled upon it? Did he just
No, I don't think he did.
okay? Because I know that people were. I want to say that somewhere on Reddit, I think, as far as it was coming out of Vice, people were saying like there was already this kind of little bit of oh, check this out, because I know when I was looking, because the context for me was people will say I'm doing these hex crawling videos. People said, oh, like there's different tools to help with hex crawls. And I remember I kept seeing these lists come up, and the Gygax 75 challenge kept kind of popping up. So I kind of put it in my bookmarks, kind of filed their way. And then when that came up, so I know it's been around, but it would be interesting to hear where he had it from. But what was it like when I guess sort of the Questing Beast fueled storm of interest just exploded?
Yeah, I wish I could put the. I'm looking at the analytics right now on itch.io, and basically it was getting probably 200 views a day. That's kind of the average. And when it very first came out, it was about 320 views a day, and then downloads in that is comparable, right? Like maybe 2/3 of that for downloads. And so on May 29th, I've got 583 views and 257 downloads. So it went up by about 100 on downloads and by several hundred on views. When actually I don't even I'd have to go all the way back to see what it was like in the very beginning, but yeah, it did cause a surge. I didn't even know about it till somebody said, hey, do you know this is going on? Yohai Gal, who does Karen, is usually the one who trips me onto that stuff because he's very tuned in, and he's like, hey, did you know that Ben mentioned your thing? I'm like, what? So yeah.
Very cool. So when you guys when you were first formulating these steps, because the Gygax, I like that you quote, and I also appreciate that you put the whole article in there because it was fun. I did it on the stream. I read through the whole article, and he definitely has a way, his own way with words and things. When you were trying to figure out how to turn some of those into more concise steps, did you have anything you're trying to focus on, or were you trying to focus on, I don't know, just ease of use, or or just bringing out, like, because you obviously got to put a little bit of your own spin on it, like you were saying. Like, did you have any kind of focus on what you were trying to emphasize when you were converting sort of his little paragraph into more discrete units of action?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. You have to kind of go back. It's been a couple of years, but I do know that the first thing I did was try to. The structure had to mimic what he put out there. The order that he did things. He didn't give a time frame really. I think he's sort of imagining you doing all this in a week or so. Fevered writing it in the evenings or something. But I don't know. So I thought, what's realistic, for trying to get it. And then, so I broke it down that way, how many weeks I wanted it to go, what sections each week would be based on his article. And then I looked for very specific things he has in his article. Like he does say, each dungeon level should have a theme, right? So I wanted to make sure that I incorporated those things. And then I just kind of took the best of my own ideas and other ideas out there in mostly OSR blogs, generator, articles and different things to kind of just get some ideas going. I think there are some things that we do differently now than they did back then, and different tools that we have and all that. So I tried to, the one thing I will say that I kind of maybe regret not putting into the book, but I didn't know how to do it very easily, was since it's more of a zine-like thing, there's a lot of references I could have named in terms of digital links to, like, the town generator by is it Whataboo or something like that.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you've seen that one.
Oh,
yeah, I mean things like that I could have. Yeah, I could have just like named a whole bunch of articles like, hey, you don't want to do it this way? Go look at this. Here's a 3-week mega dungeon article. Here's a town generator. Here's there's lots of ways to kind of not cheat your way through, like cheat smart, like
sure.
to
Though I do think it makes a nice exercise. I think part of what's driven people to go through it, right, is to kind of try to do it without just leaning on a whole bunch of other stuff. I know when I went on the stream, I think there's an impetus to say, oh, well, I'm just going to forget this part and I'll do it this way. And I remember I kept reminding people, it's like, we're going to try to do it. Let's try to do it this kind of old school sort of way and not cheat and do something different. Because you do get that feel. It is funny when you mentioned the kind of things that are different now. I even thought that the dungeon theming was one that I was like, the way he talks about themes, the way I think about themes, maybe a little bit different, because I know like in the like Castle
Mhm.
Greyhawk, the infamous bowling alley level, and some of those other levels are levels that are just filled with fire monsters for no
Yeah.
particular reason.
Yep.
It's kind of like it's maybe not the theme that I would go with, or I think its theme now is maybe like a crypt or something else that's
Hmm.
definitely different. But it's interesting to think in those terms. And even if you could come up with some kind of synthesis of, okay, what's the theming that maybe makes more sense to the modern player and GM, but still kind of captures the spirit of, presenting interesting, I guess challenges, or I mean, that's the one thing I think is always almost frustrating with that kind of articles. It leaves me with more questions. I want to ask it more about, well, how did you imagine players interfacing with this kind of level, or what does it mean in the greater sense of the dungeon if there's one floor that's just all hallways that appear to go nowhere? Like what purpose is that supposed to serve to anybody? But they're great little just fragmentary, I guess just imagination sparks at this point where you can just take it and make of it what you will. It's also interesting, I think, that's the section I think people point to is like that's the one that's going to take, that's the biggest time sink, I think, is that creating one. I don't know how many you suggested in the challenge, but even just creating one kind of dungeon level is at least a week's work for most people, if assuming you don't cheat and just go to Dice and Logos and
Uh,
print
right.
something
I
out.
actually don't think it's that bad. I think the town took me quite a while because I'm not very
Really?
good at towns. I think it just depends on what people are good at, right? So for me, I take the land and expand idea. That's why there's a kind of a limited number of rooms and limited number of monsters and things like that. And it's the idea of just get something down. They're not going to explore the whole dungeon on the first trip anyway, right? So just get some ideas down. I do think you could get through that, but I have thought about expanding that into 2 weeks where you do level one in more detail the first week and then sketch out levels 2 and 3 in the next week. So I guess that would be weeks 3 and 4 and it would be a 6 week challenge then.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Or
definitely
just
interesting
five.
because
Week five could go. Yeah. Sorry, go
oh yeah,
ahead.
well, yeah, week 5 is kind of like ongoing. It's kind of like postscript. Here you have your starter.
Yeah.
Now keep filling it in. As interesting you mentioned about towns. It probably does come down to how run your games, because towns for me are easy because I'm not trying to map them out or do anything. I'm like, okay, there's a couple NPCs, there's maybe a shop or a thing, and like you know, done, done. Because I mean, at least the way I run them, I don't usually ask the players to like take directions. You go to the end, okay, you go to the end. Whereas the dungeon, I'm more concerned with trying to suss out all that stuff. And I even still, I never have a great sense of how much of a dungeon is a good session level, because depending on the goals of your party, you think some parties are going to go through, they're going to knock down every door, try to go through every square inch, and sure, you can say that's going to take the whole session. Another party might just beeline it straight to the stairs. And you're like, well, I hope I have a sketch of that
I like
second level
to
because they're there already. Yeah.
I like a fairly dense dungeon. I don't like, a lot of people say, oh, 50% empty rooms or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that's not that much fun at the table unless you've got a lot of drama and you got people that are really into crawling. I find that people get tired of the dungeon. There's an article I read. I'll see if I can find the link, but it was kind of like it was somebody doing design, and they said what they learned was don't put something before the dungeon, because if there's like a gatehouse they have to explore before they get into the dungeon, they'll spend 3 sessions going through the gatehouse and then get tired and never go into the dungeon, and you're like, what's the point? So I like to keep it kind of a little more dense and small in scale. And I also don't it depends on whether if you run Theater of the Mind, your dungeon can just be kind of like a point to point map, right? Like a bubble map. But
Yeah,
if
or like
you're
a 5-room dungeon kind of thing where you just have sort of a
yeah
theme for an area, and when they figure
yeah
out I mean, it's interesting. The 5-room dungeon thing I think is interesting because I think a lot of people take it and run with it. Oh, it's only 5 rooms. It's like that's not really the point. And if it's something
right.
like you have to get through a series of catacombs, and the way down is you have to find the hidden staircase in one of the tombs, you really can just kind of play a little bit loosey goosey with the actual physical layout, because that's not really the thing that's important. It's that figuring the clues that are figuring out that the third tomb from the left has, out of 18 tombs, let's say, has the secret in it. Like I don't need to necessarily map out every single tomb with every single piece in it to run that. But
Well,
yeah,
and if you're
I
going
go
Theater of the
ahead.
Mind, you could just write like 30 feet next to your line. You don't have to
Yeah,
like count
that's
out the
true too.
squares. And it's still very precise. It's still like you've prepped it all ahead of time. But again, yeah. So I do map it just because I like to, but that's not where I go first. I make kind of a bubble map and lines first to get my flow and decaying of the dungeon out of the way, so that things are not too linear. And yeah.
Oh, I definitely like to draw it out because for me, I never know where combat's going to come from. So I like
Mhm.
to, I like
Yeah.
to, I like to have all that kind of mapped. And yeah, it is good to see the layout and stuff. I wanted to touch back before I forgot about it. I've been rereading the DMG, the first edition DMG, and it is amazing in some ways. But you touched upon it before. His attitude has totally shifted 180 degrees in terms of the kind of creativity they're looking for. Where you go from the three little brown books, and even again in this article reiterating, hey, somebody wants to play a dragon. Here's how you have them play a dragon. When you get to
Right.
AD&D, there's a pretty strong worded note of no.
Yeah.
Someone's asking to play that? No. And it's just like,
Well,
come on, man. Like, well, what happened? What used to be
I
cool,
think I,
Gygax? What happened to you?
I think a couple things got in the way there. One, that was Gygax was becoming kind of like the authority, whether he wanted it or not, and people would ask him rules questions constantly. And so I think that situation changed his personality. Right, he let it. He kind of followed that. I think it happened organically. Writing AD&D was something of him trying to like own the property too. That was the time he got in trouble and he tried to take Arneson's name off of it because, as you might, Arneson had given him 11 pages of hin scratches, right? And so now Gygax is writing, 700 pages between the 3 volumes, something like that, of advice and rules and everything. And he probably just doesn't think at the time, he's not thinking like, well, this is my version. This is mine, not Arneson's anymore. And he kind of just didn't do a good job of paying homage to that. But I just think that he became much more like, tried to, he saw all the tables in the world going in radically different directions, right? Like if you read Alarms and Excursions from that period, that's the Associated Press. What am I trying to say? Amateur Press Association magazine that Lee Gold made out of California, I think. And all these people doing wildly different things with D&D, and Gygax was kind of trying to draw it back in and make a common experience out of it and say, this is, you can play another game if you want, you can change the game, but you're not really playing D&D anymore. Here's how you play D&D, and that was, and I can't blame him for that. It just it loses the, he lost his charm there. He found a different kind of charm in high Gygaxian language, but yeah.
Yeah, it's just a bummer there. I mean, I get it too, and I get it from the standpoint of, look, it is a business, and at this point, you go from kind of
Mm-hmm.
printing something out in your garage to now you have a company. You're trying to, you have employees. You're trying to, and you have desires. You want to build this up as a business, and I'm sure everybody along the way is like, listen, Gary, if we're gonna, you got to kind of bring the horses back to the barn a little bit, and also from organized play standpoints and everything else. You can't imagine an Adventures League being able to be, or whatever the version was at that point, being successful if every time you went to a different game store, the rules and everything were just radically different.
Yeah.
But it is a little bit of a
Couple
bummer. I
things,
mean,
actually, you
go
brought it
ahead.
up. That's a good point. In 77, he also had competitors, right? When he wrote the rules in 74, he didn't think they would get that big. He thought it was just going to be one offering among others. He was going to do, was going to have tank games and Western games and, all this stuff. And that was just going to be one thing. But then it got huge and everybody started copying it. And you had having, other rule sets out there. And so when he's writing the AD&D manuals, he's working to, like, right, have a business, right, to make a property that the business can own and defend and develop over time. And it's just a different time. It's just different, different needs, different times. He wrote something different.
Yeah, yeah. It's I guess on the one hand, I mean, I really think it's so much time has passed because I know that I can't blame AD&D first edition for, say, the rules as written, rules as intended squabbles that
Yeah.
continually take over fifth edition. But you can kind of see how that road starts with, and then the expectation of, you got to wait to see how the official book does it, as opposed to, we're just going to do it. Let's just do it ourselves. It is just a definitely different ethos, and I do appreciate about OSR that it's kind of kept that kind of almost like punk band in your garage, this thing is yours, man, kind of thing, and not trying
Yep.
to hone it in too much to make it, leave it a little bit fluid still. But yeah, like you're saying, I get it. And if I was in the spot that I had created some amazing thing and I watched it explode and everything, I'm sure I would be torn by the same things of wanting to like, hey man, you've got
Sure.
something and you went from printing it in your garage with a couple other guys to having 50 or so employees and all this stuff. Like your concerns and everything changes. But I remember specifically reading that part at the beginning of AD&D where he goes from, in earlier books saying like, yeah, oh yeah, be anything you want to like, no, do not do that. Do not do that.
Well,
That is
he's
foolishness.
he's not the only one that's done that, right? So, like I'll give you a modern example. When uh, Jonathan Harper, why can't I think of his name off the top of my head? When he did Blades in the Dark, right? Originally, it was kind of like Ghost Lines. It was like a 2-page, more like his Lady Blackbird game, right? Like a pick up and play, super light rules kind of game. And then he wrote it into Blades in the Dark, and all of a sudden it has all these processes and things. And you just can't please everybody. Some people like that transformation. Some people don't like that transformation. They'd rather stay with that's fine. Play the game you want to play.
This is true. I mean, and that's the thing that I think, and it took me really until kind of OSR kind of came up as a thing, as this concept of really going backwards. Because I did usually just go kind of forwards. Okay, we're playing third edition now. Let's go buy third edition books. Oh, fourth edition. Okay, fifth edition,
Yeah.
great. But now, like you're saying, we don't have to. We don't have to look at Blades in the Dark and saying it replaces Lady Blackbird. Like it doesn't erase that other earlier
Right.
version from the surface of the earth. That thing is still there. And
Right.
it was funny when going back to what I said before about people looking at it like OS versions of an operating systems. I've had that argument with people saying like, well, why would I go back and do that one? Like, isn't this one just better? That's why it's fifth edition and not whatever. And it's like, well, no. But getting over that particular hump is is I guess a challenge. But
I
yeah, you're
would
right, and that's kind of the OSR thing,
I
which
would
is cool.
argue I would argue that Microsoft Word 4.2 for DOS is far better than the current version of Microsoft Word.
I'll go back to Broderbund software from back in the day, and
Word
I'll run
Star.
that. Oh yeah, for sure. So what is have you had a chance? Did people send you a Gygax 75 challenge like completed works? Is there? I'd love to do. Would you ever do like a compilation or like some kind of jam or something where we could like they do with one page dungeons and everything people put together? Because I see just tidbits of amazing sounding work. Have they shared it with
Mm-hmm.
you? Does anyone you get to see anybody's
Uh,
work?
I usually see them. People either post them up on blogs, or I see them on Discord or whatever, and or forums. In this case, the Cauldron is doing one where they're
Mm.
showing their work on a forum. Excuse me. And I have not. It just didn't occur to me until recently that I should be collecting these artifacts as examples. It would make a really fun booklet to leaf through to see other people's maps, and even if you didn't collect their whole world, right? If you just collected the part of it that you thought was the coolest bit, it really would be cool. Now, I will say this: the Gygax 75 challenge is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 4.0 international license, which means you don't have to pay for it. You can give it away for free. You can remix it any way you like. You can do anything with it, and it's yours. There's no. I think I'm probably on thin ground in like taking Gygax's original article, but I don't know if that was ever copyrighted and it's in an old like gaming newsletter.
Yeah,
And
is
making
that
that sort
newsletter
of
even
like
still existent? Where are the rights
no,
holders to?
no, it was it was primarily what's the old game with the diplomacy? It was a diplomacy war game newsletter, and yeah, it was just a fan creation. It wasn't. I doubt it ever had any kind of copyright mark on it, even.
Yeah, and it's nice. I mean, it's nice that some copy of it was still floating around. Is there a digital copy of it somewhere, or
Mm-hmm.
was it? Yeah, because it's just nice to be able to read that stuff. And it's a shame that I guess what is it? Parts one and or you said you found part one, right? But it's just not that. But
I
part
found part. I
three.
found part three.
Oh, you did.
I can't find part one. Yeah, I haven't found part one, but I did find
What's in
part
part
three.
three?
It's just some advice for running a session and an example of play, and
Any good?
I didn't find it to be.
Okay.
Nah, I didn't find it to be. I mean, I've got a link to it in Gygax 75. If you go to the introduction page,
I'll check it out
it's
then.
yeah, it's at gygax's legendarium.blogspot.com. But you can read it there. It's not it's nothing that adds to the zine. It's nothing I would draw in and say, oh, here's more information. And I
Yeah.
don't know if the first one would be either, just because the second one, the section we do have, seems kind of complete in and of itself, right? But
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think
know.
seeing examples would be fun. I agree with that. And
Yeah, I agree.
and if they, and people love those examples of play. I know folks like well, John Peterson and like I don't know, I forget the person's name who runs the Xenopus archives. Like they'll just pull out all kinds of nifty details from like, oh, you see how they did that there? Like they did the move before the shooting, or they did the shoot. They did
Right.
some, and it gives you some little detail about how they ran things during that game. So they're always kinds of fun.
It does tell you a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and it's it goes back to that weird thing with those books about kind of how incomplete they were often. Especially the Brown
Hmm.
books. Like, oh, here you want to get this whole other game for this. You want to do this element? Sure, just go out and buy Outdoor Survival, and you'll be set. Oh, you have this. Hey, you got chainmail hanging around. You got that. It's like this is supposed to be your core box. Why is the first thing saying to go, find other things? I did not see the home set at the time, but I remember when I picked it up, when I started just trying to just grab every bit of older thing that I could. And I'm glad I did it when I did, because the prices have gone up significantly since I
Oh
kind of
yeah,
was able to kind of snag some copies. But those
yeah.
shoehorn bits of like in bold, go see AD&D, it's like, and then I read up on the little history of like, okay, that wasn't really their intent, but they were just like, no, you're gonna throw that in there because it's coming. But that must have been a fun time to work, because you basically had almost three versions of the game kind of in development at once. I mean, you got the original one still around, you got Holmes, you got AD&D kind of in the works, and I imagine somewhere in that mix they're already thinking about BX and rewriting that stuff. So it's what would have been like to be a TSR in those moments where there's like all these different competing, kind of somewhat related products, sort of filling a similar space.
Right. My understanding was that Holmes, John Eric Holmes, was kind of working on his own. Like
Mm-hmm.
Gygax gave him the blessing to write this basic set, but there wasn't a lot of interaction, and it was
Yeah.
kind of sad because those references are such bullshit. Like there's no way you can marry AD&D and the Holmes basic together very seamlessly.
And
They're
the
kind of
timing
different
doesn't even
animals a little
work.
bit.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
like Holmes comes out in like
No.
77, and the only thing you get from AD&D is like the monster manual in 78 or something. So it's like you gotta wait. You're gonna go to AD&D, you gotta wait 2 years or something to get the get the player's handbook. So like, what exactly are you gonna go? And you think it
As a
leads, it leads right into the three Brown books. But yeah, don't check those out. Go wait until you see AD&D at your bookstore.
as a game master from that era, I can tell you it confused the hell out of me. And I was probably like 12 years old at the time, 11 or 12, and trying to run for my friends. And we switched to ADD pretty quickly because it was a more complete system. And also, there's something in the name Basic and Advanced that when you're a kid, you don't want to play
I know,
Basic one. You feel like
I
you're playing
know.
the. I don't want a kiddie. I don't want a kiddie version of the game. I want the real game.
It
So
hurts it hurts me, and it makes me think like, boy, what things might have been differently if I just stuck with my BX box instead of trying to go to
yeah.
an AD&D. Now, were you a group? How much of the AD&D rule set did you use? And I mean all the different, like, the DMG chock full of mechanics for every little thing. Were you full bore weapon speeds, segments, and like, how much did you use and how
No.
much did you put aside?
We just used the basics. We didn't use weapon speed or any kind of there wasn't a lot of simulation at our table. We just kind of freewheeled it, interpreted the input and the outputs, with what made sense. We used all the basic combat. We used all the skills, what there were in AD&D, the thief skills primarily, the different types of armor. But I didn't worry about weapon speed. We didn't do much with. Remember, we didn't use components much, like spell components. Yeah, we stayed it was pretty loose.
Yeah, I think that's something that kind of hurts AD&D in retrospect, is because when someone who's coming to the OSR who wasn't kind of lived in that, I think they pick up the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide, and it's just like, oh my gosh, like how did
They
anybody
take it too
bother?
seriously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they definitely take whereas the recollection from just about everybody that I talk to when I talk about AD&D is like, yeah, we kind of pick and chose what kind of worked for us, what didn't. I think it helped in your experience, like mine too, that we had those other like if you come from homes, or if I had started and I had the BX box set, then you kind of have this background where then you can kind of sift the AD&D stuff that fits what you already know, and just say like, well, we've been playing without all that stuff before, so we'll just take the kind of stuff that is maybe better to us and then leave it behind. Whereas I think that maybe people looking back on
Hmm.
it feel like, oh no, they must have 1980, they were just playing this thing with all those rules in it. And they're like, yeah, I know some groups say they did, but I don't know any of them, and I never did.
The Monster Manual is a coherent whole. It came out as a coherent whole because it's just because of the nature of the beast, right? Literally, it's just a bunch of monsters. The Player's Handbook mostly made sense. The DM's Guide, you just have to think of it as a collection of articles, and that's what it is. It's like, literally some pieces, the random dungeon generator in the back, which is really cool, that appeared first in Strategic Review. As did like an expanded pole arms rules. And so he just worked in things he had written elsewhere and kind of bound them together in that book. And, you know, you can't take it too seriously because it contradicts itself at times. You just find the stuff that's cool and play with it.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. It's just I just think that when people from an OSR perspective look back at it, it suffers a bit because of that
Oh,
density
yeah.
and it particularly
Yeah.
and also that kind of dogmatic attitude, which is sort of anti what a lot of people think of the OSR. So when you go back and you read it, between those two things, I think it puts a lot of people off. Which,
Hmm.
and of course, Gygax himself being the divisive figure also puts people off. 'Cause I know that I've seen where some people are like, I'm just not even going to bother with that because he's the main author and I don't like him from other places, so I'm just not going to read it. Which, hey, fair enough. But
Sure.
um, there is some gold things in there. I always find that these things come back to reading. Have you gone back to the blue box at any point just to check it out or
Hmm.
reread it or play it or?
Every couple of years, I try to read through like the little brown books or the blue, or the Holmes Blue Book or the Moldvay book, just to kind of remind myself what's there and it's really interesting to see what people like about. It's most sometimes it's even a misconception, right? Like they'll read the book and think it's got a certain way of doing things to it that they've almost kind of invented based on top because the rules are incomplete, right? They're just by nature incomplete. That's all RPGs should be at least an open system, I think, not a closed system, meaning you can never like write a rule for everything consistently. They've gotten better at it. I mean, fifth edition is pretty consistent. Third edition was very consistent, but it gets a lot of bad press these days. But it was the shit at the time, right? Everybody loved it. Um, Not everybody, but well, I mean, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I'll just drop it there. But,
No, I think I think it's good. I mean, I agree. I mean, I've had to refrain from getting into arguments with people about what the old rules say and people's
mhm,
perceptions of what they say or how people
yeah,
take it and what they say and those old saws of, oh, it's got all these rules for combat, so therefore it's all about combat. It's like, well, no, but I suppose if you're going to put it through that narrow a lens. But you mentioned diplomacy, and that's always my go-to argument is like, how many rules are there in diplomacy for having the negotiations that take up 99% of the time in a game of diplomacy? And the answer is zero. There's none. They
yeah,
just say huddle up and make deals. All the rules are about moving your ships and troops around, because that's the contentious stuff when you're saying whose order comes before whom and which one has precedence, and all that stuff's going to cause all the arguments. All that
yeah,
stuff about who's making and breaking deals for the hours before you actually spend the 5 minutes reading off the note cards has zero rules attached to it. It's just do it. But
hmm,
it can be difficult to comprehend. And I think that's the thing with, I guess, that coming at it from having played it is having that experience plays it, I think, is informative. I know people who've watched my streams have appreciated the fact that I could say like, well, this is how I played it. Like, I don't know how people are reading it, but this is how I actually did
hmm,
it. And it's either something maybe a bigger deal, like say reactions and morale than maybe they might appear from just what they look like on the page, and other things that maybe seemed huge weren't. I think even earlier we were talking on the Discord, the NSR Discord, about reading reviews versus playing reviews, and it's something that comes up, and I read a lot of
yeah,
stuff, is that sometimes when you read it, you don't get the full sense of what it is, or you get a mistaken sense of what it is, and it's only when you play it that it's going to click. And then sometimes you may feel like it clicks when you're reading it, and then you go to play it, and it's like, oh, this doesn't actually make sense. It's complicated. What are you playing now?
mostly old school essentials, and we're playing. we're playing a supers game that is based on. So this one's a little complex. It's based on the Black Hack.
Okay.
I think it's just called the Supers Hack. I I'm going to be a little. I don't recommend the rules. I'm just going to say it. I think they've got some problems. They need another pass, but they work for what we need. They get out of the way primarily, and so we're doing more of a storytelling thing right now, and it's really structured like comic books. And the GM even puts like titles and issue numbers on them and things.
Oh,
and
nice.
which is fun. And so we're playing the Black Hack, and it's called the Eternal Atlanteans, and it's kind of a mix of history, but not faux history, but like imaginative history, right? Ancient alien kind of stuff, and Kirby's Eternals and Atlantean, or Kirby's Eternals and the Eternals, I think. And I was trying to think of the other one that he did. New Gods is the other one, right? But it's been really cool. So we're playing that. Like I said, Old School Essentials is my go-to right now, just because I don't think it's the perfect system, but it's D&D, and it's kind of it's your basic. It's Mold Bay, right? It's Mold Bay Cook D&D, and it's the presentation is outstanding, right? The rules are organized well. They're even in the right format that I like. I like a digest-sized book, not a full. It's just a preference. But and the only thing I was thinking about this when you were just talking about how you play games. I have experimented some with Old School Essentials, right? Because like there's two things that I struggle with a little bit. One's the combat sequence and declarations and how to do that smoothly and in the spirit of the game, right? And I have my way of doing that now that I'm pretty happy with. And then the other one is skill rolls. And it's even suggests there's like multiple ways to do skill checks in the game suggested in the GM's guide. And I have some strong opinions about the math of some of those that they don't really like. They're too good. The D20, this is just, I'll get on my soapbox just for a minute.
Go for it.
The D20 roll under ability has a high success factor. Its success factor is higher than most class skills are to start with, meaning like if you're kind of an average thief or fighter or whatever, your 2 in 6 chance is kind of your baseline chance to do something like hear a noise or break a door or whatever. And that's 33%. And most, unless your ability is under a 7, you're going to have a better chance than 33% because that would be 35%, right? Roll on or under a 7 would be 35%. So, at almost any ability level, a roll 20 under that is easier. So you have to do one of two things. You either have to say, okay, well, that's only for skills that are fairly easy, for things that don't belong to a class, right? Or you just have to use a different system. I've used X and 6. I've used luck rolls. I've tried a bunch of different things, right?
So
and
what did you
haven't
settle
settled yet.
Oh, you haven't settled.
Yeah, I haven't. Right now I'm playing it as written. I'm using that D20 under ability, but I'm only allowing it for things that really anyone could do. So, example, hide in shadows is a thief skill, and it sounds like something anybody could do. And my feeling is it isn't. So, like a thief can hide in shadows, kind of like when you're in the same room with them, or even behind like a bigger figure or something. That's a special ability. And anybody else trying to hide in shadows, like if you're in a dark alley and they say, well, I'm going to hide over here in this side alley in the dark, I'll be like, yeah, you do that. I mean, like that's, or if I think they might be noisy or something, I might make the roll to hide. But that's, anybody can do that for sure. It's just when it gets down to, I try to make that, I guess what I'm trying to say is I make that special for the thief, or try to.
Yeah, I think that's how I definitely come in with the thief abilities in general, is that they're all beyond normal people. Like I take it kind of literally, like you're hiding in a shadow, whereas you don't have the cover. Like even an alley, I presume that the reason why you can hide in that shadow of the alley is because no one's looking in the alley when you're looking at they're like coming down a side street, right? And you're depending on having the wall kind of protecting you, and it's only like because they're not going to just look. Okay, they're not going to see you, right? Whereas the thief, it's like there's a shadow of a column in a room with flickering torchlight, and he slips in there. It's like your beefy fighter guy's not, armor's sticking out. He's not able to find, he's just not able to find that darkness. I don't use a separate like lift bars or lift gates, bend bars kind of thing. So for that, I just go with I just use the attributes. But it does the way I like to at least put it is that it does give your players a little bit more of a super heroic or just kind of heroic feel because they are more likely to succeed if they have just not awful stats. As soon as you have them rolling under, chances are if they have, like you're saying, at least a 7 or 8, they're going to have a pretty almost a 50. If they just have 10s, they have a little bit over 50% chance of success. But I don't have a lot of other skills, so heck, I don't even have a thief in my game, so nobody even has hiding shadows access to that things right now. So I don't even have to worry about it. But I think if I started to have more skill packages, then I would definitely want to rethink it, because you're right. Like if the ranger has a 2 in 6 chance of tracking at something at level 1, I can't have somebody else roll under their wisdom to track, because chances are their wisdom's going to be better than the tracking skill. So then you have to, once you start having those competing systems, you have to figure out how to make them work. And I would probably move off of
that's why
under attributes.
I don't even like backgrounds much, because backgrounds make people argue those kind of things. Like, oh, my background is I was a woodsman. I would know what tracks look like. Yeah, probably. But like, that's like it. Yeah. I just try to keep it special. Yeah. By the way, you say not having a thief. I applaud that. I like that. And the rule set I would like to mention relative to the 3 little books is delving deeper. That was my favorite
I love delving deeper. Yeah, I like that. So I don't know why it doesn't get as much press as the other one.
I don't know.
I don't know why.
And it's so cheap. You can get it for like $5 on Lulu or something ridiculous. It's a wonderful.
They have a free really good web version. I mean. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it just. Well, I guess it doesn't. There's no company behind it and everything. But yeah, delving deeper. Shout outs to that. I forget who does that, but yeah, they are.
Not a lot of art.
They're really good.
It's Simon Bull. Is that right? Simon.
That sounds.
I think that's right.
But
yeah, it's at Immersive Inc. I think is the website. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it is. It's not a lot of art, and it is off the 3 little books, and it. I think it's
3 little books though. I always think like I find something. I want to say this here. Anyone who's let's see, some people here read the 3 little brown books. Get them on, buy them, read them. There's so many good things in there, and I always every once in a while go through there and I'll find stuff that I don't know for whatever reason just didn't filter. I feel like there's this whole like filter thing. Like there's some big funnel, and the 3 brown books, even though as slight and slim as they are, there's a bunch of stuff in there, and then just parts of it just fell away. So you end up with things where you have people always like, where are the rules for chasing things or running away from things? Guess what? The 3 brown books, there are rules for running away from things, both evasion, both in the wilderness and in the dungeon, including telling you in the dungeon that if it's something that's like an animal, you could try to throw food or rations behind you to try to help lose it. Or if it's an intelligent beast, throw some treasure behind you and basically say, here's some loot. Throw up, all that stuff, which is great. And even though it's just a couple of lines in there and it didn't make it, and I don't think it's in Homes, that's not in BX, which is unfortunate, but it's there. And there's tons of just little, they don't take a lot of room. It's not a lot of mechanics involved, but just these little things that just, I don't know. I don't know why some didn't go through and just didn't pass it forward. But
there's some good stuff in there. There's also some really weird stuff in there, but we won't get into that. Like, like the fact that if you have a monster who can see in the dark and you convince them to be on your side, they can no longer see in the dark.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like they're not a monster anymore. They're now a hireling. So hirelings can't see in the dark. But monsters. I mean, even monsters, people. I think there's even a note that like if humans and non-player humans in dungeons can see in the dark just fine, but regular humans can't. But I just go ahead.
This year at GaryCon, the guy who did the Secrets of Blackmoor documentary about Arneson, which is cool, really cool. If you want to learn more about the hobby, that's a neat way to do it. But he ran a game for us. I'm gonna forget his name, honestly. He had a cool like one, it's like it wasn't Sting, or anything like that, but it was like Zeb or something like that. I can't remember his name now, but he was really cool. And he had brought in some handwritten notes from Arneson for the aerial combat system that was supposed to go in D&D, and we played it. And it was really cool. I mean, I kind of thought it was really basic, but it did the job, right? And I thought, and even what was the coolest was Arneson had little hand drawings for the counters. So you had like a vampire on a nightmare steed, and you had a Balrog and some other stuff. It was really cool.
That's awesome.
But yeah, there was a lot going on back then that we forget about. That's very cool.
Yeah. It's just it's just that it's always that interesting thing. I guess different people editing it, different people writing it, which stuff just didn't make the cut for whatever reason. But sometimes I go, it's like, oh man, I
Right.
wish someone
Yeah.
had just gone back and just given this another pass and said, let's push these things in, because I think that the another edition that doesn't get, I don't think enough people really go back and read it, are the actually original Brown books. People go back and pick up maybe delving deeper or some of the other ones, but I think even some of those don't
Hmm.
pick up on some of those little tidbits that are really practical, I think kind of good advice. I mean, the thing is with the underworld, like the underworld, the whole mythic version of the underworld, so I suppose you can just play it off that the reason this happens is because the dungeons are living things, and once you exit their service, they take away their boon of dark seeing. But they are also like, like what doors would open automatically for enemies and shut and try to block you from leaving. So there was a lot of kind of fun, though weird stuff in the dungeon.
Dungeon logic wasn't a thing back then. Funhouse dungeons were kind of the norm, and it was. If you ever read Philotomy's Musings, he has a great essay on the mythic underworld in there, and it's kind of points out like, look, it's a weird place. Yeah, things happen. Like doors may shut and lock behind you. Right? You might find and people sometimes don't have enough imagination. Like I saw a funny cartoon a while back, and it shows a fighter or somebody who's like a party, like walks into a room, and then this room is just it's stuffed to the gills with one creature, like a big ogre or something, right? And they're kind of asking like, how did you get in here? And I'm like, there's all kinds of ways he could have gotten in there. Somebody could have summoned him in there. Maybe he was a small thing that walked in and somebody enlarged him. Maybe it's an illusion. Maybe he's not really there. Like people are too caught up. I think sometimes I'm not trying to judge, but you can
Oh
get too
no, no,
caught up in logic.
yeah, oh yeah. I
Yeah.
think I think there's definitely we can go too far in the direction of having to be kind of realism when we're talking about fantasy universes
Yeah.
full of all kinds of strange and wonderful stuff. Like I really like, and
Well, yeah.
I use the like the doors slam, the doors shutting. Like I'll have that my party will be somewhere deep in the dungeon. All of a sudden they'll start hearing these doors slamming behind them, and it freaks them out because they don't know why it's happening, who's doing it, but
Right.
it's happening. And then the first time that they came back on a door and it was stuck against them, like they were like, all right, we got to try to wedge this door open. Like it really, people talking about, why do you carry around all these kind of weird things with you? It's like, that's why, because you need, not only you're trying to jam shores shut, but you might be trying to have to jam them open, so that's why you bring a bunch of spikes and this mallet with you into a dungeon. It all had
The dungeon
reasons.
is trying to kill you. The
Exactly.
dungeon is trying to kill you. Yeah.
Exactly. So what projects are you working on? I'm cognizant that we're getting towards the end here. What's next
Oh, I don't
for
know. I didn't know you had a
in the
time
docket?
limit. I'm just rambling, right? We didn't even talk that much about Gygax 75. It's cool. You should try it. No. So what else am I working on? Well, I'm working on. So the Mythic GM
Yeah,
emulator.
I do. I've talked about
It's
it
a
on the
cool
channel
book.
before.
Yeah, I've got a beef about the art, and I've put that beef in with the author, and they agree that it needs some new art um, because
I
it's
can't even
sexist. I'm
recollect
just
the
gonna
art.
say it.
Oh, is it? See, I don't even. Yeah, because I think
No,
I go in that book. I just go basically to the two big tables,
no.
and I don't even really look at
And
anything else.
for
So
me, it's way too much. But so I made a simpler version of that called the Oracle. That's on. It uses 3 little dice, and that's on. If you go to rayotus.itch.io, you'll see all my stuff there. I got sorcerers and cell sorts, and I'm going back through these days and kind of revising some of them to make them a little cleaner and whatnot. Just to kind of finish up some loose ends. I don't know why. Maybe I'm about to die or something. I'm getting all this weird energy to like clean up old things.
you're just
But
getting ready for
it's just
Gygax
a phase I'm in.
76.
That's what I'm getting ready for. Yeah, but the thing I'm working on right now is a card-based version of the Oracle. Do I have it? Hang on. All
Like
right.
playing
So
cards,
it's
tarot cards.
playing cards, but so like the rules, basically the table fits on one little card, right? And then on the cards, you write stuff at the top, like so that when you're so that you don't have to roll on the table, so you just like lay out cards for
Mm.
yourself. And along the long edge, I've got cues like I haven't written on these yet, the cues, but they'll be like add an extra or an extra character or you get new news or whatever. And so like things that help you kind of push ideas into there. And then I've always had this kind of like love affair of like marking on poker cards as kind of a design tool. And so I want to put like the other side of the card I'm going to reserve for like motifs for your game. So if there's something that's important in your game, like an important villain or just a like love conquers all or some kind of theme you want in there, you put it on, you just write it on the cards, and then eventually those become like the deck becomes a very rich tool for you to do solo play or use as a GM or whatever. And that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Oh, that's really cool.
That and going through Gygax 75 with you all. So that's called Into the Yellow Planet, which is I'm building a little setting based on Wellesian and Vernian kind of science fiction.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I started we kind of a community Gygax 75 challenge last week. We've only done, it was not this last week, at the beginning of the week. So we only did the first week where we got our concepts, but I think we have a really kind of cool thing. It's sort of early medieval, fall of the Roman Empire, only instead of the Roman Empire is all lizard folk, and they worship dragons. The dragons can't see through stone for some reason. They have trouble manifesting through stone. We're still kind of working out some of that stuff but there's a lot of different lizard folk, and kind of humans were sort of sent underground or kind of in captivity, and elves or dwarves. We're not quite sure if they're outliers from other planes that were brought over for the lizard folk for various purposes and then escaped, or whether I sort of like that they might be variant humans that adapted in different ways to this lizard overlordship that they'd been suffering through. But there was some kind of apocalypse, the death of the lizard folks god king, and that's kind of where the the campaign would start, sort of this kind of almost like they had their sort of their dinosaur asteroid moment, but it's geopolitical. But it was really fun going through the process, and I know some people were like, oh, we should just do it all in 1 week, and I really had to kind of, I feel like one thing with the challenge is I'm reading comments from people. I know it's been challenging for them, and also for myself is that I decided to keep on a week to week, because I think it's good to let things marinate and sit down, because I know people want to just like burn through it, which you can do it. I think you could do it in 5 days or 5 hours if you really wanted to, but
I make the point in the book that like, don't work ahead, right? Don't anticipate, don't work ahead, and don't drag it out either. Like, so if you get the end of the week and you haven't gotten everything done, that's fine. Move on. You can come back to it, right? I got gardeners outside my window here, so if you hear funny noises, that's what's going on. But no, I just think it's take part in the creativity, enjoy the creativity, get as much done as you can. At the end of 5 weeks, see what you got and whether you want to punch it up. I think I put about 8 hours into my first 2 days, each of my first 2 days, or each of my first 2 weeks. I put about 8 hours in each one.
Yeah, I think it's that it's kind of a good discipline, for any kind of writing or anything, that you need to get a draft finished, right? It's no good having 75% of something. You got to get all of something out. And even if it's not totally complete and it's not right and it's full of errors, at least get it done, because you can always come back through it and do it over again. But if you never finish, you can never get to that coming around again. You're just kind of stuck. So, but
perfect is the enemy of done. That's my favorite sayings. Perfect is the enemy of done.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to pitch? You have something you want to shout out?
No, I'm good. I just, like I said, if you go to rayotus.itch.io or just rayotus.com, it will take you there to all my links to various projects I have going. I work in cycles. I have different, meaning I have like phases
bicycles,
where all I want to do is read.
Motorcycles.
Oh, or where all I care about is, one thing, I get focused on something for a long time, right? And I'll do that, and then I switch up. So Dungeon World was my game for a long time, and I did the Plunderground zines. And those are still, I'm still proud of those, and you can get all those free at rayotus.itch.io. But yeah.
You should put some, you kind of probably missed the boat to put a $1 price tag and before that questing beast thing hit, and then reap the massive.
You know what? I'm glad. Yeah, it's not, I got a day job. It's one of those things where it would be nice to make money on it. And I know there's arguments about I'm somehow hurting other people by not charging for my stuff, which I think is ridiculous. But it's not ridiculous, but it's ridiculous for somebody to say that to me, because it's my choice, right? Like if I want to put them up for free or not. But but I understand the viewpoint. So I did, when I had a Patreon for a while, and I was making, when I was doing the zines, I was making like $400 a month or $500 a month on that. And I started to feel guilty about it. I was spending all of it on art for the most part to go into the zine. So it was cool because I was supporting artists, but I just didn't want to get into like having to worry about it on taxes and things like that. And, for that small of I just want it to be a hobby. I don't want it to be a job. Let's put it that way. That's why I put stuff out. For me, it's just about scratching creative itches. I do the things because I love to do them, and I try to work on them until I think that they're as good as they can be, and then I throw them out there for people to enjoy. You know.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I would never say somebody like, oh, you gotta charge. I think where maybe people could be more friendly is when they're clearly trying to undercut things. Like you don't need to undercut your fellow starving artist by, it's
Right.
that App Store 99 cent deal, right? Because once people get conditioned to, you know, everything should be 99 cents, well, it's really hard to do anything like you're saying, pay for art, do all this stuff if you're going to do it at 99 cents. You got to sell a bazillion, and who's going to sell a bazillion of anything? So it becomes this kind of self-fulfilling, horrible cycle. But
Yeah, the power in a dollar or two at a time though is pretty strong. When I was making that $500 or $600, I was making it like $2 at a time. So it's like everybody can afford like a dollar here or there, and you'd be surprised how many. If you got a project that needs funding to do, don't be afraid to ask. You'd be surprised how many people will chip in. Yeah.
yeah, I think if you can, yeah, definitely. I think if you can hit that sweet spot, I think that's the kind of the Patreon model, right? Because it's that a month versus
Yeah, it is.
for a flat fee. So it's getting some folks it's kind of hard because I on the when I deal with software, I don't like that. Like I'm not a fan of subscription models for every piece of software.
Yeah, me either.
And I understand what people are
Yeah.
saying, but like, look, especially if there's no online element, like if I'm just buying a thing that's doing a very simple thing, I don't want to pay you $2 a month to do it. Like I'll spend $20. I'll
Right.
spend a reasonable amount of money on it, but I don't want to get into the $2 a month for something that has no cloud services, nothing that is incurring costs on your part, but for kind of these kind of creative things, I think if you're going to keep putting out stuff, and doing that, then, I'm fine with the ongoing support. Thanks a
Hmm.
bunch, Ray, for hopping on. I
No,
mean,
thank you.
is there anything that I know we didn't cover everything, but I didn't think we had, so my goal was never to let's go step by step through the Gygax 75 challenge. I just wanted to
No,
kind of
yeah.
use that as a springboard. Is there anything that's, I don't know, surprised you, or anything that maybe, granted, obviously maybe the attention that's on it now is surprising, but just in terms of either what people have found useful from it that you didn't think they'd find useful, or something that you thought would be easy you've seen difficult, or you thought it would be difficult that's been easy, like anything about it that's kind of been interesting or surprising about how it's performed and watching people go
Uh,
through it now.
I will say that I think a lot of people maybe wear themselves out in the dungeon week, and then when they get to the town week, that's where they kind of drift off. And it's so funny because I've said this before: you're literally done at that point. You're almost done. If you just push through the town week, week 5 is kind of like, oh, hey, now circle back and do some things that I gave you some ideas, but there's not a task list for week 5. It's like, I think I'd say do 3 of these things or something, and it's just kind of wrap up, right? It's a feel good, it's closure. So I just say I would encourage anybody, you get into that point, like I said, you get, even if it isn't what you want, by the end of week 3, if you're knocking your head against the wall and it's hard, just put it down. It's okay. It's okay to close the book on that week and just go to the next week and enjoy and you'll come back to it. That's I make the point. I don't know how many people read the advice in the beginning of the book, but one of the things is that Ernest Hemingway. I've heard this story. I assume it's true, but he used to stop writing for the day in the middle of a sentence so that when the next day, when he sat back down, he didn't face the blank page problem. He would just start
Mm,
writing again. And one of the cool things about this process is leaving loose ends is actually a feature, not a bug, right? It's like those loose ends. It's okay just to write like, I want to do more with, lizard folk religion here in the margin, and just leave it there. And you can come back to it when you get an idea for it. It kind
yeah.
of marks out the space, right?
Yeah, I feel like that. I
So
feel like
that's
they
all
could
I'd
do a
say.
whole stream on the loose ends. I think that I've heard other words for it, like enigma. Because I find so much that people will try to close every single thing and make it so complete and tight, but they end up strangling
Hmm.
themselves. And there's an example I've used over again. So apologize, folks, if you've heard this before. But talking to somebody about their world building, and they had gotten in the situation where they had flying cities and no way for the party to get to the flying cities. Because they just everything that every access path they'd cut off. Oh, what about magic? Nope, they can't do that. What about that? Nope, 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 nope. And it's like, well, buddy, I don't know what to tell you, but you got flying cities and no way to get to them, and you're gonna have to do something. You're gonna have to pull out the eraser and do some of that. Otherwise, your party ain't getting up to those flying cities, you know. But people get into those troubles
Make one
because
of them crash. You know.
yeah, let them do something. But you know, you really can box yourself into corners when you try to fill in every last detail. Let some things hang loose, even
I
after
don't
your
know.
game
Yeah.
starts. Let some things be unexplained. Let your party just get into it, and they'll start thinking up
Well,
explanations and
I
stuff.
also
And you know,
say, I also say in this that you shouldn't complete it. This is look. The one thing you do need to play a game is other people for the most part. Now I play some solo games, uh, but you know, like if so one of the points of this is to actually leave some of the in Dungeon World they say draw maps and leave blanks, right? But the idea is as you get players into this world, the setting you're building, they're going to ask questions you haven't thought of. They're going to want to go places you didn't expect them to go. What that's great if you have, you know, you could just work ahead of them, right? You don't have to finish it all out and use some of their ideas. You know, I just like if you have somebody come in and they want to play, you hadn't thought about halflings in your setting, right? Maybe you don't want halflings, or maybe you just hadn't paid any attention to them. Somebody comes in with a halfling and you ask them a few questions and they tell you about their homeland and all this kind of stuff. You're like, well, that's really cool. Okay, put it on the map. You know, like let them be part of this. Let them be part of the creative cycle too. Gives people a lot of investment in the game, and I'm big on
no,
that.
now you've brought in story gaming into our non-story gaming. No, the
Yeah,
party
well,
has
it's not
no
very blur.
say.
Go to blurb principles. I'm probably going afoul of the blurb principles if you ever read
No,
that. But yeah, no,
I think it's
yeah.
good. I think it's good. I think that's coming some of the story game kind of
Hmm.
stuff that I think gets overlooked too much. And even if my players don't know they're doing it because I'm listening to them and they're saying like, "Oh man, is
Hmm.
this person a herald from these people?" I'm like, I didn't think so, but yes, now it's exactly who they are. And the funny thing is, then when they
Yep,
that connection comes up in the game, they feel super clever for having like, I knew it. Like I knew that was the Herald. And I'm like, yeah, you did. You're right, man.
that's
It's like
right.
I didn't know it. You knew it, and
That's
I
right.
didn't know it. But now we know it together. All right, Ray. Well, I'm gonna close this off, folks. Everyone, go check out the Gygax 75 challenge. Check out the other stuff that Ray has on his itch page. Which, if you go to the Gygax 75, I'll put a link to the page, the home page part of his thing. But if you go to his the 75 page, you can click on his to see the rest of his wonderful materials.
Yeah.
This will be going on podcast form on Ray's podcast. So if you want to check back and listen to this later, what's the link to your? I'll throw it in, or shoot me over in Discord. Shoot me over the link to your
Yeah, just
podcast. So I will
everybody can just go to rayotis.com. Just
go to
one link. All my
rados.com.
stuff is linked out from there. Yeah.
All right, I'll put
Yeah.
that in also, so that everyone can just
Yep.
go there and grab everything. Ray, thanks so much. I know we've talked online in various Discords, but it was great to see you in virtual person, I suppose. And the
Yeah.
rest of you folks, I'll see you tomorrow, hopefully, for the OSR Reddit Roundup. That's right. For those people who may have come in here to listen to Ray and don't care a whit about me, most Fridays I will go through the OSR subreddit and try to pick up interesting topics and talk about them. Usually we find at least a few things that are fun or at least thought-provoking, and then we chat about it. So it's a good time. I like it anyway. It's something to do.
Cool.
And I've done 50 of them now, so we reached that
Jeez. All
milestone
right.
last week. Yeah, crazy. But I think once this ends, it doesn't kick us out, so I can talk to you for a couple minutes afterwards. But the rest of you guys, I will see you
Okay.
tomorrow. Game on, and take care, everybody.